Okay, so regarding what to expect today, I had a number of topics that I was hoping to cover today, and the balance of how we spend our time will be contingent on a little bit of feedback from the audience. But broadly speaking, there are four sort of major topics I was thinking about hitting. One of them is related to the modeling type supported by AnyLogic. My sense is that given the audience composition and knowledge, the use of the techniques, so discrete event modeling, system dynamics, and agent-based modeling, I think people are broadly familiar enough with the basic features of those that might not be the best use of time. But you could tell me if I'm off base in this. What may be of more interest to people, depending, is discussion of what I see a little bit as sort of trade-offs between these approaches, when you'd use one type of approach, when you'd use another. And I certainly have slides, which I've refined over the years related to that. But really the choice here, importantly, is not one. AnyLogic avoids you needing to commit to one approach for a given model and thus getting you locked into that approach. Rather, it affords us the opportunity to weave together these techniques within a given model. And really, when we're talking about the trade-off between techniques, it's no longer a matter of project agent-based modeling or system dynamics modeling or discrete event modeling, but should I, for particular research questions that you're bringing to the bear within a project, in particular sub-areas of your model, what's the best fit for that sub-area of the model? Should I be capturing a person's encounter with the healthcare system upon development of a condition? Should we often flow system dynamics? Context of that agent's evolution over time, for example, their social networks, their location, aspects of their interactions with others are captured in agent-based modeling. So to highlight hybrid models, which based on people's responses from the survey seem to be a foremost area of interest, I thought we'd spend a little bit more time going through a set of hybrid models I provided to you. Given the audience background, I also thought that we'd use those hybrid models to look in a little bit more detail of how we capture that hybridization, not merely talk about conceptually what's going on and how it's hybridized, which has a lot of depth to it and substance, why we choose to use hybrid modeling for certain questions, et cetera. But we'd also look at the plumbing, how we accomplish that. And if there were interest on the part of people, we could build hybrid models. If there were interest on doing that, we could sit down and we could build hybrid models of several different sorts. So that was going to be a significant point of focus. A third point of focus, as time is permitting, is sensitivity analysis. How we develop confidence in a model's results when the exact nature of those results differ from run to run, from realization to realization. And sheds light on how we can systematically use Monte Carlo ensembles, running the model again and again and again and again, and summarizing the results for that. And how we could run the model with different assumptions is captured by parameter values and examine the model results for those different assumptions. So sensitivity analysis with respect to AnyLogic models, a process that enjoys its own special summary measures, and it also has some texture about how you implement it. And it can be added to a model very easily, but you need to know your way around. It turns out that you can pretty easily get it to run your model many times, but then getting it to extract the data from that model to summarize requires some plumbing. And it's not hard. It's not terribly difficult to put that plumbing into place, but again, you need to have some conceptual framework for doing that, because it's easy to miss, particularly if you're running the model again and again and again in particular scenarios. So sensitivity analysis is an area rich implications. The final area that I was thinking about covering today, again, as time affords it, is the area of data collection and model output. What I like to call the epiphenomenal processes associated with the model. The observer processes is how Railsbeck and Grimm in their book Individual and Agent-Based Modeling characterize it. These are the processes that observe your model over time. They don't govern the model. They don't shape how the model changes over time. They don't impact the model's evolution over time, but they collect information on it. And often there's quite a few processes that are doing that all through a model. So we'll run the model to gain insight, and in order to give us insight, we collect all the run beyond what happens to be displayed on the screen at a given time. And AnyLogic provides us with a fairly rich toolbox of mechanisms for collecting information on a model while it is running. Things like data sets to compile up the data, and histograms to present it, and time plots we've already seen, and these sort of mechanisms can be very powerful and can afford us both interactive and batch type data collection for later analysis. And so outputting data from a model is often a very important activity, and one I don't want to see submerged. It's one of the most important activities that we do in support of our modeling. And there's a set of features related to this sort of work, this sort of data collection, that AnyLogic supports built in. You've seen the current state of the models, how many people are diabetic or infective or recovered or what have you. Those sort of things are easy. What's not so easy, what's not built in, pretty easy if you know what you're doing, but it's not built in, is collecting what I call flow statistics. How many people have gotten infected in the last week? Or longitudinal data on individuals. And my thought was to take a little example and go add about 5 different types of statistics to it, systematically hitting different things, some things at an individual level, some things at a global level, some things cross-sectional, some things longitudinal, some things compilations of historical information over time, like the times at which I got infected, and see how the mechanisms allow us to collect that sort of information. So that's output. It sounds like kind of a downstream auxiliary issue, but it's at a practical level, it's a very important one. And if we're going to run our models to get insight, we need to run them with the instrumentation to give us the insight. Now, tomorrow, Priyasri will be, it'll be Priyasri's chance to shine. And Priyasri will be talking about some mechanisms in support of data output, mechanisms that automatically collect a huge swath of information on your model without you having to write a line of code, and models that will automatically record a sort of lab notebook, as it were, of model runs to record whenever you run the model what the assumptions were, what the model gave us visual output to run, who ran it and when, as well as information related to the model, the specific model version that was used to run that. So she'll be talking a little bit about that tomorrow. She'll be also introducing a tool written by a different student, but one she'll try to demonstrate if she can, that exports model results to R. So it allows you to take the data that's collected by a model, and again, without writing a line of code in your model, allows you to run the model and then open up R and, in a very simple little way, load in that data exported by your model. Yeah.
I think that's great, Liz. And for those listening, once it's in R, you can easily export that data to like SAS or Stata or your preferred
exactly
software. So that's going to be hugely of interest.
Okay, so I think we'd be shooting for Priyasri's talk tomorrow morning probably. But of the topics I talked about, I'm looking for guidance as to the prospective topics for today. I'm looking for guidance as to where to spend my time. Like, do people need in the room? Am I off base in assuming that people don't need a basic orientation as to
I think if you did a really quick, like if we just a real quick superficial, 5 minutes per topic, that would take care. But most people are familiar. There's a couple people that aren't, but they're not going to get familiar with their stuff. So it's a couple minutes just to give them the big picture, because I think it would be very helpful to have you share your thoughts too on when do you. So AnyLogic is incredibly flexible.
Yeah.
And it just seems like to go to software if you want to do a lot of potentially hybrid modeling. But when do you still go to Vensim or any of the other sort of single approach software tools? I would be very eager to hear you reflect on that.
Sure.
And then the other thought I had, everybody else is very helpful and of interest to me as well. I've had conversations with many of you in the room where it would be helpful to hear you talk about each and every one of those. So I wonder if you have thoughts too, Nate, on which of these topics do you feel are best delivered in person versus, like, for others, might there be videos that we could watch? Analysis, for example.
Right. Like, there are some pretty darn good videos of me discussing trade-offs between methods. And as you can imagine, I could probably spend half the day talking about the textured trade-offs involved with agent-based and system dynamics and discrete event modeling. This is a whole topic unto itself. It's not a topic without its strong feelings on some people's parts, and it has lots. But it's not a black and white issue, and it cuts into issues of stakeholder understanding, and it cuts into issues of skill set availability, and it cuts into issues of the what you can easily represent in each, and how much time you've got, and it's a whole textured issue. And that is one issue where I feel I could point people to a video and say, watch this video and you'll probably get 95% of what I cover here. And but I understand that that's an issue people might be interested in, and so I could spend a bit of time on it. So I'm looking for guidance here. What do people think? Yeah.
So, the last two topics you mentioned were experiment, running the model multiple times,
right,
the data, based components. I'm interested in both of those components, but I'm also interested in sort of how they interact. Because oftentimes we want to collect detailed data on our model, but we also want to run it multiple times.
Indeed.
So managing what are sometimes very extensive data sets coming out when we're doing So particularly that.
Okay. Yeah. I could make some comments on that because some of our modeling projects, in fact, related to one of the trade group, we have quite extensive data related to it, placed in a database, and found gigabytes and gigabytes of data accumulating. And I could have some comments on some basic things to keep in mind for that.
I wonder if it might be good to introduce that model and let us play with it as a chance of sort of touching on a lot of the topics.
Possibly. One thing that I did in order to turn into an example model is sort of disable the database-related features related to it, because I didn't want people to have to install MySQL database on their computer to even run the model or what have you. But in any case, we might be able to look at that a little bit more closely. Okay? Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in the implementation and data collection.
Okay. Okay.
This is when we talk about model, you can shed some light on that.
Right.
Also on integration with R and other statistical frameworks.
Yeah.
Combine it with Bayesian analysis, for example.
Wow. Yeah. So that's that brings up another issue I was considering for today. So thank you. I stand before you as someone who's been learning in Bayesian analysis, and one of the ways in which I use modeling is together with those methods. So I use those techniques together quite a bit with our dynamic models. So applying MCMC and sequential Monte Carlo methods to basically look at posteriors over parameter values and so on. if there were interest, I could talk about that a bit. But there's another whole aspect which some people have expressed interest in, which I was thinking about leaving as a possibility for tomorrow, which is the whole sort of big data side. I mean, personally, I think big data as a term is overhyped. I think it's not. I think it's a category problem. I don't think that's the best way to characterize the most fruitful sort of characterization of the features of the situation. But whether you call it big data or digital epidemiology or use any other term, the fact that we have data available about certain processes and phenomena that are depicted in our models. And when we're building models going forward, a lot of the issues that we confront will be shaped and informed by the fact that we have these alternative data sources. We see it already with our models, where some of the models we'll be looking at, they're informed by huge amounts of administrative data from our province. Now, by big data standards, this is small potatoes. You don't need NoSQL to handle, hundreds of thousands of people's longitudinal medical records. But in other cases, we're dealing with a million records per person telemetry systems. And if we have models that are articulated at a very fine-grained level about people's mobility and people's physical activity levels and people's eating habits on an hour-to-hour basis, that's the sort of data that will inform those models, in contrast to data from self-report surveys that are conducted every few months. And so this whole confluence of kind of digital data that could be come together with models, people right now are dancing around that issue, trying to figure out how do they best come together. And we've done quite a bit of work in that area for about the past 5 years. And I'd be glad to say some things related to that if there's interest. I particularly think in the health area, this is a growing issue, particularly with the emergence of electronic health records and the emergence of wireless telemetry systems like we use. Okay, so that's another whole topic. Okay, so in terms of prioritizing one proposal. We have a lot to cover, and I think it would be remiss of me not to cover certain topics, like data output and sensitivity analysis I view as key integral topics. And if I left this room the end of tomorrow without having covered those, I really would have felt I'd done you a disservice. I left you without some key tools that you need going forward. By contrast, big data, I would love to do that, but my thought is to do that tomorrow. Today, I also think I need to cover hybrid models, because if there's one thing that came out of the survey that we did, and I looked at the survey results from people, one unanimous voice, by acclamation, it was the ability to do hybrid models, to look at hybrid models. The trade-offs between models I would love to do, but you will find videos of me standing in a bear pit in Australia before a group of, figurative bear pit, okay? Standing before an audience, characterizing what I see as the salient trade-offs between a bunch of, between the three different modeling types, specifically SD, ABM, and discrete event, and pieces of a situation another for a particular sub-area of a model, particularly. So my thought is to sort of not do that today. Sure, if a space-time wormhole opens up tomorrow, and I'm able to do that tomorrow, that would be great. But I think time is closing in, and we have to get down to business with some of the essentials. So my thought would be to defer that. I can give a couple-minute introduction to each of the approaches, what I see as their really notable features, and other people can chime in. And then we can go on and look at some hybrid models and look at a concrete level of how those hybrid models work. And if there's interest in it, develop some very simple examples showing the basic mechanisms. Okay? That sound reasonable? And then this afternoon, as time allows, we can do a sensitivity analysis and then output, model output, okay, and data collection within a model. Yeah, does that sound reasonable? And tomorrow we're definitely going to be hitting the other sort of topic without which I feel I will not have do service, which is calibration. Okay? We okay with that? Okay, great. Okay, so thank you for helping provide feedback.